Sometimes our misfortunes are the sails that take us to the shores we are meant to be on. You can achieve extraordinary things here, even shape the course of the Imperium, if you decide to stay.
Welcome to the official Dune Prophecy podcast. I'm Greta Johnsen.
And I'm Ahmed Akbar. Today we're digging into the third episode of Dune Prophecy, and as always, we have some very special guests to break it down with us.
Yes, first up, we are going to talk with the episode's director, Richard Lewis, along with executive producer and writer Jordan Goldberg and executive producer Mark Tobey.
Then later, we're joined by the actors who play young Valya and young Tula, Jessica Barden and Emma Canning, and we'll talk with the costume designer who brought the looks of Dune to life.
And listener, here is your spoiler warning. There are spoilers ahead for the first 3 episodes of Dune Prophecy, so consider yourself warned.
This is not the first time an adversary has sought to remove me. Like the others, this soldier will learn.
Okay, Ahmed, let's do a quick recap of this third episode. It is titled Sisterhood Above All, and it starts on an excessively dreary planet, Lankavale, which is where the Harkonnens live, and they were sent to live there after the Great Machine Wars, which is something that Valia references in episode 1.
Yes, we're meeting young Valya and Tula in their childhood home, and that's where we learned that Valya used the voice for the first time in her youth to save her beloved brother Griffin. Later, Griffin is killed and Valya, typical Valya, vows revenge. She loves doing that. She makes her way to the Sisterhood, finds a mentor in Mother Superior Rokella, and eventually undergoes the agony.
Yes, Tula has a heck of an arc in this episode as well. She ends up on a secret mission to work her way into the Atreides clan, where she manages to kill pretty much everybody, including a young man who she may or may not have been in love with. Also, in the present day, Valia is developing a plan to defeat Desmond Hart and regain the trust of the Emperor. And by the end of the episode, that plan brings her face to face with her Harkonnen family, which is probably the last place she wants to be. And in the present, on Wallach 9, Tula is using both a thinking machine and spice to secretly keep Lila alive after she fell into a coma while undergoing the agony.
I want to hear what you thought about the Valya-Tula relationship in their youth.
Oh, there's so much to unpack. I'm really excited to talk to the 2 actors who play these young characters because I think there's just a lot to talk about, especially with them. But I thought the backstory was really helpful and just brought a lot of story that I didn't know existed, which was really interesting, you know, like especially the Atreides mass murder, like did not see that coming.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big question also for me, just like the extent of which we would see other planets and seeing like a different environmental, you know, kind of the environment that the Harkonnens are in. It's like pretty miserable. You know, it's you could see how dour you would be living on that planet.
Yeah, no.
And we also have the other scene on the Atreides planet, Calendar. And I love the, you know, integration of the natural stuff that we saw in this episode.
Yes.
That was like a really fresh way in because Dune has a lot to say about nature. It's about politics too, but it's also about Earth and your relationship to it.
Totally.
So we got to see that here.
I also thought it was...
Earth, sorry. There's many planets.
Well,
let's say Arrakis or in your relationship to it or whatever you want to say. You know, let's say it's a metaphor.
Yes, there you go. Well, I think also found it really interesting to get to know Valya's kind of origin story with the Sisterhood because she's actually a little more reticent than I thought she would be. I knew she was a bit of a rebel, but I mean, Rokella kind of had to talk her into the whole thing in a lot of ways, you know?
Yeah. You know, her relationship to her family is like a really big question for me of how it's going to evolve. I mean, the fact that she's kept Tula close, I assumed that they had joined together.
Right.
And seeing that Tula actually did perhaps what we've seen so far to be the most brutal murder of the series.
Murder, plural.
Yeah, really. It's a declaration of violence really against the Atreides, which is obviously going to last a long time. And that kind of pushes her into a situation where she's joining the Sisterhood. I'm not sure that she was intended to go there. So like, it's really interesting to me to think about, like, to recontextualize the earlier episodes and the earlier things I said.
Yes, totally.
Tula did show some mercy on young Albert Atreides. She did leave one to tell the story, which is in some ways Also a cruel
even more brutal
tactic. Yeah, it's one of those cruel tactics that like it was kind of depicted as mercy here, but it's kind of a very I've destroyed your family and never cross me again kind of thing as well.
I was reminded about part of the conversation we had in episode 2 about the title of that one, which was called Two Wolves, and like which is worse, the wolf who cries over the lamb or the one who doesn't. And yeah, that was something I found myself thinking about throughout this episode, especially in terms of Tula.
Totally.
Okay, now we are going to break down the episode and get some of our questions answered by a few key people on the show in our weekly segment Beyond the Veil. Joining us today is director Richard Lewis, executive producer Mark Tobey, and we welcome back to the podcast executive producer and writer Jordan Goldberg. So Jordan, this is a huge episode. We really get origin stories, like significant arcs of backstory for both Valya and Tula. This is perhaps an interesting point in a season to do a flashback, just because we are sort of at the halfway point with episode 3 out of 6. What were the conversations you had that made you realize like this was the time to kind of give this like significant backstory?
Well, I think a lot of good series uses the kind of backstory, origin stories to kind of deepen your characters and helps them kind of make their journey going forward a lot more interesting. These particular characters, I think, had even a more present need for that kind of thing. Not only their relationship, but also their lineage. And in the books, it's a very interesting story about the Harkonnens. They're not who we think they really are. Their kind of descendant was marked a coward and banished to this place. And really, he made a decision not to kill millions of people in a war. It was sort of like a moment of pacifism that was kind of branded as an act of cowardice, and they all suffered from it. And that was an interesting place to kind of start to think about. Oh, this is really kind of fascinating. The kind of how they would react and to that, and how like someone with Valia who has all these ambitions like that kind of history is kind of a stain that she's trying to kind of erase. Also in the books, there was this story about Valya and Tula perpetrating this act of vengeance because the death of their brother, and it ends up, beginning this generational feud with the Atreides, clan, and that seemed like something we should like kind of tip our toe into. But Monica Usu-Breen came on to do a lot of heavy lifting with the writing, and she's I don't know if you know her work, but she's an amazing writer. She used to work with Allison a lot, and I worked on the outlines, got it ready. Monica did a few drafts. It was great, and Monica's very good about bringing the real raw emotions into the characters, and it was important for us to tell that story.
So we get more backstory, but we also get a new setting here at Lanky Vel, which is their family planet. The Harkonnens were banished there after the Machine Wars. Richard, let's talk a little bit about creating that set. Was it shot on set or on location? And like, what were some of the thoughts about how you wanted to emphasize how brutally cold it was, how brutally severe of a place it is to grow up?
My whole thing was like, it has to feel brutal. It has to feel really cold, really, and I don't know, but I kept telling Jordan, like, as he was in post, and okay, they're going to add snow, right? They're going to add more snow, right? There's going to be more snow. So, I was just like, it's not supposed to be an inviting place. It's supposed to be a place you want to escape from, as Valya does, and Tula does eventually.
Well, having grown up in Fairbanks, Alaska, where it is currently 27 degrees below zero, you did a great job. And we heard too that like it did actually snow, right? Like was it the first snow even when you were filming?
I think so. Mark, did it snow? It was pretty snowy, right?
Yeah, it's because of a lot of the challenges with our schedule, we really had to do a lot of juggling. So even though the Lankaville scenes play in episode 3, we actually shot them at the very end of our schedule. And fortuitously, it was the first day of snow when we actually went to shoot. So there was actually snow falling, onto the set, which was kind of a minor miracle, really.
That's really cool.
I want to talk about the whaling industry and all those props as well, both in just a storytelling sense and also a visual sense. What's the deal with the whales? We keep getting reminded it's all about whales here. So what did that mean for you all, and how did you, kind of visually and through storytelling use the whales?
Jordan, you speak on that. to start off with? Like, why? I think that's from the books. It's from the books.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, they're into. I believe that they have a history of the and whaling, and we needed, just to kind of further kind of put the Harkonnens on a really kind of dismal level. I mean, their economy, their resources is not the most glamorous thing, and I think it was important to show the harsh environment and really sort of the kind of lack of opportunity for someone like Valia on that planet, just to kind of so we can resonate with the idea that she has these grand ambitions in play and why she would want to escape this place so badly. I mean, I love when she's ordering dinner. I mean, the idea that that's the only thing they can eat is just, it's a fate worse than death for her. It's horrible. It's a horrible fate.
Well, and I love the family dynamic too, that they're like, you brought the bad whale meat home. Like, you could just get this layers of family argument.
It's not a functional family.
Your father has plenty of status.
Oh yes, the mayor of peasants.
Valia.
Your grandfather, Abulard Harkonnen, was a hero. He didn't commit a war crime. He tried to stop a genocide. Vori and Atreides stripped our family of its honor based on a lie. We should be leaders of the Imperium.
I don't understand where it comes from. Your greed, this entitlement.
I don't want to just endure. This complacency is a disease. If we don't act now, it will infect all of us and all who come after us. I won't sit by and let it happen.
Let's talk a little bit about that family dynamic. Like, what are each of the different kids and their relationship to their elders bringing to each other, bringing to that table?
Right. Well, from a script point of view, we wanted to have a family dynamic where Valia is a little bit out of step with everyone else. Everyone else is just kind of grappling with the situation they're in. Valia doesn't think it's appropriate, wants more for them. I think that Valia, because she's not getting along with her parents or seeing eye to eye to them, I think the person that she's closest to is her brother. And her ambitions have disastrous effects for him. And what she's left with is, guilt, anger, and her little sister. And how does she, transfer all that onto the little sister is an interesting thing. But, those were just the words we set up. I mean, the way Richard concocted on screen, I think I'll let Richard tell it, but, it really came alive for me when I was watching it.
Yeah, I think it's one of those scenes where you know that you have to get out of the gate well. You've got to make sure that scene sets the table for the rest of the episode. And in thinking about it, I was thinking, I wanted it to be spontaneous. I wanted overlapping dialogue. I wanted her to be a pivot point and the point of view to come from her. So, I wanted her to have eye contact with Griffin. There were a lot of things that were in the script that I was just sort of dissecting and trying to figure out, what's the best way to approach this. But I decided to shoot it. Richard Donnelly, the really fabulous DP on this, and I decided to shoot it handheld. We did a number of these family scenes that way, just to give it kind of an edgy, little unsettling feeling, because I think you want to feel unsettled with this family. You don't want to feel like, oh, this is a nice family dinner where people are talking civilly towards each other. So I just wanted it to have an edge. So I think that came across.
It's interesting to hear you mention guilt, Jordan, in terms of something that Valia would have felt after Griffin's death. I hadn't thought of that as like her really propelling him forward. I figured he had sort of like thought of it as his birthright and would have done it anyway.
And the way you staged it, their conversations, the last conversations that Valia had with Griffin, it's the location you guys found and the way it was staged. The idea that they're looking out to a horizon and, is there a future there? It's so can you tell the difference between the sky and the ground? Is there a world to which they can go to? There's mountains and rivers in front of them. It just seems impossible.
I think that was a no-brainer, Mark, when we saw that location.
It was hands down.
Right? We were just, Mark and I were just
nothing else really competed, which I think is true with pretty much all of our locations on this episode, where we found the one option that actually functioned hand in hand with the story, because we spent a lot of time looking for some of these and happened upon them, thank God, because plan B was shooting the little grassy pond behind the stage, or the
That's interesting. Did that feel lucky?
Felt extremely lucky. You know, the Kaladin location, that's where the Atreides camp was. We had spent months looking for, you know, Hungary has a lot of things going for it, but one thing it doesn't really have is a diversity of locations. It's mostly, you know, it's mostly farm country. It tends to be, you know, very gently rolling hills. So it doesn't have a lot of dynamic topography. And we had changed location managers, and after sort of combing everything possible, he found the Kaladin location, and it was, I mean, stunning. It was stunning.
Yeah. And hats off to Damon Crane, you know, English fellow who became our location manager.
Quick clarifying question here. When I was watching it, do they name it as Calendar in this, or was that kind of the twist that she was falling in love with an Atreides? I didn't catch it. I kind of assumed like this could be an Atreides, but I think it was a bit of a twist, right?
Well, I think it's really important that you don't know it. If we had said Caladan, the book people, all the people who know the book would go, "Oh, fuck! Right. I know what's going to happen." So I really wanted it to be you know, kind of a surprise when he wakes up in the morning and they play that scene and he goes out there and sees, you know, all the dead bodies.
There's also the misdirection of, is this guy a good guy? Because if she finds out that she's been lying, is he going to attack her? You know, that's like the fear that is in the audience's head, that, you know, a lot of these scenes do end up like that. When the big reveal happens, usually the noblest instincts don't come out of the conflict, right? Like the conflict was predetermined, which was such an interesting way to reveal it. And I guess we should step back a little bit and talk about that relationship between Tula and Ori Atreides.
My name isn't Tula Vale. I lied to you. It's Tula Harkonnen.
I certainly understand what you didn't want to tell me. No one chooses the name they're born with. Could never blame you for that.
You don't hate me.
Hate you. Nothing would make me hate you.
Our families would disagree.
Our families, yeah. They choose hate. Because of what they're taught. That a disagreement between our ancestors during wartime over a century ago should bleed into their future, but that is their burden. Not ours. It's okay. I promise it's going to be okay. Just listen to me. We will write a future for ourselves, okay?
Some things can't be changed, Ori. My brother, Griffin, will still be dead. And it will still be an Atreides who killed him. We do what we must.
I found that to me the most poignant moment, mainly in the series, because it was an intersection of time where he actually there was an opportunity there to end the feud right there, that he gave an out. He gave an opportunity to completely change the trajectory of all of their lives, and everything was going to come from it. You know, everything essentially that followed could have been altered, but at that point it was too late. I thought it was really tremendous that when the final, you know, probably the most sympathetic character that we ever see is sort of tragically dispensed with in the course of this, you know, of this sort of tragic tale, that he's just discarded.
I think too, Emma acts the hell out of that scene.
Well,
where you really can see how much she's wrestling with the question of like, what have I done? Because it's pretty clear to me that like his response to her being a Harkonnen is not at all what she had anticipated, but it's too late to do anything about it at that point.
I think she didn't anticipate falling in love with him. You know, I think that was the thing that she, you know, dreaded the most. And her struggle comes from the fact, and I'm glad that you picked up on it, Greta, you know, that at any point she could pull the trigger or, you know, back out of this deal. You know, I feel like at any point she could have said, I'm not doing this. I'm going to change the trajectory. I'm going to, you know, marry this man and, you know, that's going to be it. But she doesn't. She ends up having more allegiance to her family and her sister.
But at the same time, as we cut into the present, you know, Tula refuses to give up on Lila. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I don't know whether that's a manifestation of guilt and stuff like that. And you know, it's an interesting, you know, how it affects the present and where she is in the present. You know,
I mean, she's breaking all the rules at this point with Lila.
Yep.
What were you going to say, Richard?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I asked Jordan a provocative question about Tula's methodology of killing. Like, at what point did she decide this is how I'm going to do it? Did she come with a plan? Did she have a different plan that she said, poison's better? Did she know about these little poison animals that are used for the bull?
And did she communicate with Valia? That's the other question that I had. That same line of questions, but is Valia involved, or is that completely made?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I have my own imaginations, but the truth is, I think Griffin meant so much to them that an eye for an eye wasn't enough. It was an eye for the entire body. So fortuitously, this hunt, which is a tradition in the family, it happens to be the opportunity to wield the axe.
So, let's talk about another big decision being made in the Sisterhood plotline, which we haven't touched on much, which is that Valia develops this relationship with Rokella, and Rokella asked her to settle her allegiances. Come back a Reverend Mother, or don't do the agony or not. And Valia does it out in the snow on her own. Talk a little bit about that decision. What are the reasonings behind why she decided to undergo the agony then and there?
Well, she was going to take the agony previous, as you see earlier in the episode. She backs out at the last minute. As a result, she's cast out. She feels like she, really let one slip, and everybody thinks she doesn't have it, and she doesn't even know if she has it. And I think it was really important to the character to take the poison at the right moment. And I think anybody who's going to try to become a Reverend Mother, I think they have to be in the right place. It's so funny, like as if it's real. They have to be in the right place and mind to be successful. And I just feel like she wasn't there yet, and she knew that. So when she goes back to her home, she finally comes to the point where she realizes, I cannot be here anymore. I cannot do this anymore. And she feels, ready and poised to be successful. I don't know that she knows that, but somewhere deep down, she feels like this is kind of the last ditch effort to escape her predicament.
Richard, I totally hear what you're saying about her uncertainty, but it reads to me as just not giving a shit, which totally tracks for how Valia would behave in that situation, right? Because she's not actually going to be vulnerable about any of it.
I also think she probably thinks she's going to die.
And she seems to accept it. It requires an acceptance of death to do that.
It's the risk.
Acceptance of risk there.
We haven't talked too much about the present day and the thinking machine of it all. Do you think Valia would approve of the decision Tula has made?
With Lila?
Yeah.
I think there's been a history of people who have tried the agony and failed. And I think that it's best to let those people go, because it'll frighten people who have to go, try it again. So I think her decision to spare Lila, this is an audible on Tula's part. And I would say, though, and Mark can speak to this, the location is incredible that they found for this thing. You should tell them about it, Mark, because it's an unbelievable location.
There's a huge tunnel complex in Budapest. There was actually it was created in World War II. The German army built their warplanes in these massive tunnels, and they go on forever. It makes for an incredible shooting location, but an incredibly uncomfortable shooting location as well, because it's freezing cold, it's damp, but it's incredibly it gives a kind of a dynamic feel that you just can't find anywhere else.
That's so creepy and perfect, that location.
It was like 80-something degrees outside, but when you went down there to shoot, it was like 10 degrees. So you'd be like, I gotta go to the bathroom. You walk outside, you're like 20 layers of like winter clothing on, and you're like, holy cow, what the heck's going on?
I came up with everything I could possibly do to make sure there were other things scheduled on those days to keep me occupied elsewhere as much as possible, because it was not pleasant.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us and for helping unpack this epic episode.
Thank you very much.
This was great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
are so happy to welcome the young Harkonnen sisters, Jessica Barden, who plays Valya, and Emma Canning, who plays Tula. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for coming on. So we are here today talking about episode 3, which I'm really excited to have both of you here for that. Obviously, over the course of the first 2 episodes, we got a sense that Harkonnen family dynamics were, let's say, a little tense. But I would love to hear what you think about how the women, particularly in this family, relate to each other. Jessica, what do you think?
They don't. That was always, I mean, I think Emma Tula would have something different to say, but for Valia, I think I don't relate to anybody. And that's the problem. And me and Emily discussed this like a fair amount. There's a lot of envy of Tula because she is a good person and she doesn't find it difficult to be good, whereas Valia finds it really hard to just be normal and to be a good person. So, you know, there's a lot of envy there, as well as like I really need her as well. It's definitely a dysfunctional relationship.
I think for me, yeah, that like the gaze is very much, my gaze is always drawn back to Valia and very much met with like the side of a cheek kind of. I don't think there's too much, as you say, Jess, like relating to each other.
They just need each other to survive.
Yeah. Certainly at the start of the episode.
Yeah, well, I think you get a sense, I mean, throughout this episode, I think about even that last scene with the agony, you really get a sense that these two, it is a relationship of necessity, you know?
And through the rest of the series, I mean, it really is a credit, obviously, to the writing, because I know that you spoke with Olivia and I would speak with Emily, but the 4 of us like never really like planned anything. There was just no time, but it carries on through the rest of the series, which is so interesting. I have a daughter now and I'm about to have another daughter, and I grew up with brothers. So ever since I've like told people like, oh, I'm having another girl, suddenly I'm like introduced to this like whole other part of life where like sisters have this like very unique life together that I have no idea about.
Yeah.
Emma, do you have any sisters?
No, I have a brother. So this was really interesting. I mean, myself and Olivia talked about obviously the role of Tula, but also kind of birth order. And Olivia's the youngest. So she could really speak to kind of the idea that, you know, with each child, more and more space is taken up and there's kind of less and less to reach for as a kind of a way to differentiate yourself and kind of, like an identity. And I think that was something that, I think especially at the top of this episode is so the struggle of Tula. She's very much in the shadow of everyone else.
Mm-hmm. Isn't Valia the middle child?
Yeah, which is interesting.
Which is obviously hysterical.
That's interesting. Well, but she's still the big sister, you know, which I think does always have a certain weight to it. Whether
and
or
clearly
not you
she's
want it
just
to.
completely cut from like a different cloth.
Yes.
I think one question that's worth asking is like, you know, if they have such a challenging relationship with their Harkonnenness, with their own family, like why is Valia so attached to the family legacy? And how does Tula feel about her family legacy?
I think with Valia, it's just pure kind of stubbornness. Like, I think it's just like you are born and you can be a stubborn person that wants to be right. And Valia wants to be right. Like she originally wants to avenge her family and have this truth. And then she realizes, you know, fuck them. They don't appreciate me anyway. I'm going to avenge myself, which is obviously like just beyond incredible to play. And I think that she's like truly believes that she's destined to be a leader. And if her family isn't going to go on this journey with her, I'll just do it myself, you know?
So yeah, what do you think then about Tula's trajectory, Emma? Because it seemed to me that a lot of it hinged on her brother's death, which is what really got her thinking, oh yeah, maybe Valia does have a point here.
I think that's kind of the whole motivating factor. I mean, I think for me, obviously there was a lot of backstory to build in prep of like what was the relationship with Griffin, and, you know, kind of did he see her in the way that everyone else doesn't seem to. And, you know, there is that line that she says early on to Valia is like, an eye for an eye will never be enough.
Why is Griffin so significant for each sister? Is he like kind of a neutral person where they both can look up to him, you know, so that they, you know, have a like a better way of processing their relationship to the family? And why does his death trigger what they'd each go on to do? Like, how do you think that your future characters are taking Griffin's death into
he's
their
the way
storyline?
out because he's like the firstborn son, right? So he can go, he has so many more rights in the world and in the universe as a guy. Like, he obviously has like the birthright to be the person that can go to the Imperium and can like fight and can ask for all these things and can try and avenge us. And then, you know, obviously I think that's how Valya and Tula find out that like you can go and be in the Sisterhood and you can fuck shit up as well. Like, I think that there's two different things to it. I think that Valya especially like completely hero worships like her brother and is like, wow, like he can be our savior. Like I think he gives her a purpose in this like disgusting, like cold planet. And he's this beacon of hope, you know?
We talked to Emily recently and she described Griffin as the love of Valya's life.
And then she has to like take Tula instead, you know?
You sound so disappointed.
Charity shop version.
Emma, I need to know, like, you know, when this plan comes in for the vengeance against the Atreides, like, how much of the character is doing this because of a genuine grief for Griffin versus, you know, being put in that position by Valya? Was she groomed, as the character says here, into this plan?
So interesting. I think both can exist and both do exist. I mean, I think Griffin, the way I thought about him was kind of like, you know, he is my only friend. I don't think Tula has any other friends. So that's like a colossal loss and kind of one that, I mean, grief makes all of us do crazy things. This is probably a bit too crazy, but I think it also drives her into just, she sees an opening, I suppose, by Valya's side and a real opportunity to kind of finally prove herself and finally step forward. And I think she just really wants recognition and approval and another friend.
It's really sad.
It's
sad. The family is very sad.
Oh, so I would love to talk more about sort of the plan of the Sisterhood, because as we learn in this episode, it becomes very clear that for Valya, it's about being able to be truthsayer for her brother. And it does really seem like her conviction in terms of being a part of the Sisterhood also falters upon his death, because she's sort of like, what's the point of any of this?
Yeah. It's funny that Emily said that Griffin was the love of her life, because I also felt like Mother, you know, Raquella, Mother Superior, is like this first person that then enters her life and is like, oh, like she's the only neutral person, and just a neutral person who, you know, a teacher, like a head teacher, and is like, I can see that you have potential and we can nurture you, and it's normal. You know, there's nothing kind of bizarre about it. It's just a normal relationship where a teacher sees a pupil that has a gift, right? And she really kind of like fills this spot that has gone with Griffin, that, you know, Mother Raquella like comes in and there's this new vision for her to kind of like latch onto, and like a new obsession in a way. Similar to what Emma was saying about Tula, like in grief, like people often do crazy things and they like latch on to something to just like have a new obsession to like fill it. And I think that's what begins to happen at the Sisterhood then. She gets taken on like another ride, which is so much bigger than just like going and being a truthsayer, really.
I think the other interesting thing we see at the school is a different side of Valya when she kind of has the secret of the voice.
Yeah.
And she's sharing it with her peers. You know, there's like a different sort of, maybe she's commanding them, but there's a softness.
She's not confident there.
Yeah.
I really wanted that to come through. What I wanted to create was, you know, people get stuck in a pattern with their families of like, it's all projection and like, well, you're going to react like this and you know that I'm going to do this, so I'm just going to do this anyway. And it's not even necessarily how she is. It's like how she's been painted and like made to feel by her family, so that she's just trapped in this like thankless role, really, of like being a brat, basically, and being ungrateful. So that when she goes to school, you kind of see more of her, which is she is an observer, and you have to see parts of like how she ends up being a leader. So like she does know how to take a step back and watch. You know, you can't just be a bulldozer and be a leader. And she doesn't have a lot of friends there. She feels misunderstood. Nobody thinks that she's going to do well. And then she has this gift that has probably felt like a burden for most of her life. And then this head teacher, you know, the mother superior, Raquel, tells her, actually, you can like completely change the universe with this. But she still doesn't know what to do with, like, how does she do something good? You know, how does somebody's giving her a compliment, like somebody's paying attention to her in a positive way. All of these things to me was so relatable. Like they were all normal things that in any, not just in this genre, in any genre, like this character could exist in any single TV show or movie anywhere. A young person who grew up in a family, like just a completely depressed family that did not pay any attention to finding anything redeemable about them, going somewhere and being told, actually, you can do something good. And the journey of that person going like, what do I do when people actually suddenly pay attention to me? And that was what I felt was the whole point of episode 3.
Mm-hmm. So then, Emma, how did you think about Tula's relationship with Ori Atreides? Like, does she actually have feelings for him, or is it all an act?
Alison talked about it in kind of you know, Griffin is the soon-to-be patriarch of the Harkonnens, and Ori is kind of his mirror in the Atreides clan. So it's kind of a tit for tat. And I think as she goes on that journey and, you know, gains independence and confidence and that kind of morphs, and she's like, actually, that isn't going to be enough. And it's really about kind of trying to come to terms with the grief and the loss of her brother.
By killing a shit ton of people.
Yeah, because one person isn't going to do it.
In the last episode, I was talking about how there's something so cold about the way Valia uses the voice and uses the same command over and over again, pick up your knife and drive it in your throat, like she doesn't regret it. But there was almost something more chilling about Tula in this episode, because I really couldn't tell what she felt about, like, the tears were real or the murder was real, like the actions versus, like, Emma, where did you fall on that in the end? Like, did you feel like she was as conflicted as she was verbalizing, or do her actions reveal like a real coldness inside?
Especially, it does seem like there's a moment when she confesses that her last name is Harkonnen, and he's like, that's fine, whatever. Where it seems to me like she is sort of like, oh shit. Like, I could have had this.
Yes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I mean, I think Alison and Richard, our director, they gave me a huge gift in kind of saying, like, you know, this is a love story, and we want this to be a love story. So it immediately, you know, there is the other option of she isn't in love with Ori, but by making that choice, it's like the stakes and the internal conflict are so huge, and the more she falls in love with him, the like more messed up her insides are feeling. So I think the more I leaned into, you know, I love this man, the harder all of it was. And I think, you know, at every point she's trying to do the right thing and pick the right side. And in that moment that you were talking about, Greta, where, you know, she does reveal her last name, I think she's really expecting for him to kind of show his true colours and to reject her, and for her to understand that, like, yeah, you deserve what's coming and what has happened outside. And the kind of the shock of how genuine he is, and actually how much of a wonderful person he is like, it's just heartbreaking.
It really is. It was such a shocking scene to watch.
Yeah.
Who do you think is more dangerous?
Of the two sisters?
Of the two sisters, yeah.
Because obviously, like, it feels like the obvious answer is Tula, because she is like a, what is it, like a wolf in a sheep's...
A wolf in sheep's clothing.
Yeah, she's a wolf in sheep's clothing, whereas Valia is very much like what you see is what you get. Like, she never pretends to be...
Yeah. There's no surprise in her menace.
No, like, she never pretends to be anything different. She's completely self-obsessed, and she's like a dictator, you know?
It's all right there, though. Yeah.
But whereas Tula also seems to understand consequences, which is a crazy thing for like somebody who does the things that she does to feel, you know? She then dares to process after, which is really sick. Valia doesn't
pretend to be
on
balanced.
It.
Yeah, no,
Valia doesn't linger.
tracks.
She's just like, we move on, you know? Like,
yeah. I love the class that Olivia holds, where she's talking about what lying is. And like the line in episode 1, in episode 1, where she says, you know, and we lie to ourselves. And I think that's pretty bang on with Tula. I think there's kind of constant internal and external lies going on.
So Emma, do you agree that Tula is the more dangerous one?
I would.
She's a messy bitch. She's messy. Yeah. She's a messy girl.
I think she's pretty unpredictable, which is like, that doesn't feel safe when you can't predict what someone's gonna do, or like actually what they want.
Yeah.
I think also the fact that Valia has kept her around as long tells you that she is very dangerous, and she knows that, because she can't let her out of her sight.
Yeah.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing how the characters grow in the next few episodes. Thank you so much, Jessica Barden and Emma Canning, for joining us.
Yes,
thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Now we are so happy to check in with costume designer Bojana Nikitović. Bojana, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
We're so excited. This is a very basic question, but as somebody who's not crafty, not good with making things, this kind of thing must take over your mind. Do you ever like wake up in the middle of the night and go, oh, I have an idea for how I'm going to make that thing look, and like you like work on stuff? Like, how is it like a 24-hour thing that you're trying to think about? It is? Yeah. Okay.
It is. Cool. For me, definitely it is. And that's why it's so beautiful, but it's exhausting, because you don't stop thinking. Not only me, I think the team that is working with me, that they're all the time, night and day, thinking about how can we do it? How can we, make it look better or something? I never worked with Alison before, but we were like on a daily basis, nonstop exchanging references, images, drawings. Sometimes, at 10 o'clock at night after a long day, like she would send the message or something. She said, I'm sending you this because maybe during the night you will find the solution. You will find so, yeah.
How well did you know the world of Dune before taking on this job? Did you ever read the books or watch the movies?
Of course, I watched the movies, and movies are really visually absolutely fantastic, and they're so great. But I read the 2 books when I was young, and then when I heard that I will do it, then I took all the books, and I read them like in 10 days, I think, or maybe 2 weeks' time. Like I was like reading. I couldn't stop. And what is so wonderful in our script is that there are pieces, but it's also different, Yeah.
So I think one of my favorite things that I've noticed so far about the costumes is that the women of the Sisterhood get such great traveling cloaks, like with those giant hoods. I love them so much. But I would love to talk even more broadly about how you came up with the different aesthetics of the women of the Sisterhood specifically, because everything is really functional but pretty austere. I think it's a really interesting set of choices that you've made with those costumes specifically.
I don't know whether you noticed, whether anyone noticed. I hope it will be seen during the series. Actually, those are pants. What they're wearing, they're not. It looks like a dress,
cool.
but they're wearing pants. But just
they're chic, wide-legged pants.
Yes. So all the
very on trend.
And I really hope we will see it during the series more, because usually the camera goes from the back, so you see from the back it looks like a dress, but actually they're wearing pants. And I know that all the actresses, from the Sisterhood, young ones, they went like crazy. And I gave them like pockets so they could, put their hands in the pockets, move well.
You have to have pockets in this situation.
Exactly. But pockets were actually really helpful, because sometimes they're putting their knives or the other things that they're wearing, they're carrying. So it was good to have them.
Is the knives legitimately in the pockets? Like, did you design a knife holster in some of their
clothes?
But
I knew that they're having to put knives, so I said, let's put it in the pocket. And you don't see the pocket, but it's there. Then the other thing is, we started with the dresses, but if I would show you like drawings, it's like it was like 5 or 10 different options for that. I mean, that was also color-wise. We wanted to like see that there were girls who are just arrived. Then we have novices. Then we have acolytes. Then we have reverend mothers, and so we made all in this. Monochrome palette, because the whole Valia 9 is gray and rainy and stormy, and so we went through that, and we wanted to show the difference from Valia 9 to Salusa and to the colors that we are going to show on Corino family. And then when we started thinking about Alice said, can we make a trousers? I was, that would be absolutely amazing. So there.
Fighting the patriarchy, one costume at a time. I love it.
And
and
if a Sisterhood was to design a costume for themselves, it would have pockets.
Exactly.
For sure.
Pockets, 1,000%.
Because in a real life you would love to have pockets, wouldn't you?
Well, hidden pockets especially is very like symbolically rich for the Sisterhood, I think.
Yes.
So I feel like in the show, like the obvious thing that you really want to talk about with costumes is the Sisterhood, because I feel like a group of people in a uniform, they really stand out. That's what a uniform does. But on the other hand, we have a whole other thing we could talk about on the Imperial planet, which is the one of a kind kind of thing. The I'm standing out on the day, my special day. So of course, the most important thing that does get a lot of visual time is the wedding dress. And as is, kind of all the bridal stuff that she has. There's a scene of the fitting with her mother where she's being kind of snapped in. So interesting how we went on such detail there. Like, let's talk about that dress.
Yes.
Beautiful.
I think we are all very proud of that dress. The idea was, for me, fabric is so important. And when you when you choose the right fabric, or when you make your own fabric in a certain way, I think it resolves 80% of the costume. Then it's a silhouette. It has to have a right silhouette. For me, I worked a lot in Italy. I learned that from silhouette is really, really important. And to get the fabric for the red dress, we used one layer of a silk, satin duchesse, and then we did the other layer is laser cut. So we made the fabric completely. So important, that scene where Natalia, the queen, is dressing daughter and giving her something from her culture, from her history. So, and also, believe it or not, I went to Vienna for something else, for fabrics or some, and I found the necklace, and the necklace was so, but the pieces that it was made of, I was like, this is amazing. So that's what we started from. Then our metal guy, because we have a metal department, then he started making pieces. It was a long process, and it was really important for it to fit well, to have all this, and then we got to the upper part of the dress that looks like a net. Also, in a way to show that she's, in a way, getting trapped in the whole situation.
Yes.
So that was
Yes.
the idea. Yeah.
And yet she was choosing it. Oddly, she also is going into it willingly. That was what was such a great about it. Like, she's kind of putting it on herself. I love the visual metaphor.
Yes. Oh, that scene is really good.
Why a red wedding dress, Bojana?
I must say, I inherited, like it was already in the script.
Oh, sure.
But I really love the idea. I mean,
it's gorgeous.
Yes.
Can I actually say something about this? Because it's really interesting to me. When you look at like most sci-fi shows, most fantasy shows, in the history, men wore long coats, okay? They wore long coats at court. Every culture, they're going to have long coats. The only seemingly culture in the world that I know of, besides maybe West Africans, where the long coat is still part of our bridal wear is my culture, which is Indians and Pakistanis. We have sherwanis, we have Nehru coats.
Yes.
So when I see Mark Strong, he is wearing what looks to me like a sherwani. It looks to me like what I wear at my wedding, what my family members have worn, and I find it so fascinating. Like, is that something that like costume designers of the West are able to put together? Because obviously, like the Nehru collar, that style was popular in the West. I just want to be clear, like it's not foreign, or is it something that you're turning to like Indian designers or whatever? And the reason why I bring this up is because our bridal color is red.
I know.
That's the reason.
That is interesting.
I just wanted to say, I mean, in India, bridal color is red, and it looks amazing. Yeah. I must say that I found Indian outfits one of the most amazing, gorgeous pieces because they are.
Yes.
It's still so masculine, but it's so beautiful. It has this clean silhouette. So. I don't know whether it was subconscious. I mean, because I love India, I wasn't directly inspired by the Indian men's code. But interesting. But Mark Strong, I just wanted he's such a perfect actor. So he wears costume in a way. I mean, it's always everything is after the whole day of shooting, everything is exactly in the right place. So since he is also the emperor and he's also the leader and his military person, we wanted to mix that between uniform and the outfit for the ceremony. I know female costumes are always more attractive, but I really like well-dressed men.
I would wear Mark's. I would wear many parts of Mark's outfit to a wedding. The next wedding. Like genuinely, I would take bits and pieces and wear that to the next 3-day Pakistani wedding I go to.
Well, if you want to send me a cloak, I will happily accept it.
Yeah, I don't think I'm Mark's size, but I will definitely take his leftovers.
Good.
Well, thank you so much for talking with us. This really was so much fun.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure. Thank you.
That's all for this week. We'll be back next Sunday night with more special guests to break down the 4th episode of Dune Prophecy, which you can watch on HBO or stream exclusively on Max.
Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. And if you like what you're hearing, you would be doing us a huge favor by leaving us a rating and review on your podcast player of choice. You can also find us on the Dune Prophecy social media handles.
The official Dune Prophecy podcast is produced by HBO in collaboration with Pineapple Street Studios. I'm Ahmed Akbar. Follow me at Rad Brown Dads.
And I'm Greta Johnsen, and I am on social media at Greta M. Johnsen. Our executive producers for Pineapple Street are Gabrielle Lewis, Jayanne Barry, and Barry Finkel. Our lead engineer for the show is Hannes Brown. Pineapple's head of sound and engineering is Raj Makhija. Pineapple's senior audio engineers are Marina Pais and Pedro Elvira. This episode is mixed by Hannes Brown.
Our editor is Darby Maloney, and our producers are Ben Goldberg and Melissa Akiko-Slaughter.
Special thanks to Becky Rowe, Allison Cohen, and Aaron Kelly from the Max podcast team.
Thanks for listening. See you next week.
She's a wolf, and if you're not careful, she will devour you.